Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. So this is our HTML. So just we are taking an HTML, simple plain HTML, and we want to learn. We are learning about the specificity, right? Let's say that I am having a button. Okay, so this button, and I am having a class, my button. So this is the same thing which we have take. Now let's say that. So this is a button. So this is our class. Now let's go on to the style. So I am not creating a separate external file. So here only we'll write it. So same thing happens. So if you try to external file also the same thing. Now here what I am trying to do, here I am taking my button. Okay, for this my button class, I am taking a class. Here I will apply color blue. Okay, and the same thing I am taking with a type selector. So element selector, I am giving it as a color red. So now what is the color it will be applied? So according to that one, so here the position and order it is important. So the position and order, if you try to take the new instance created is the button thing. So here for this the same element we have a style of color blue. Okay, it will apply it. Then afterwards again it has seen that again for the same element it has applied the color of red. So that means it will override the same property and it will make it as a red color. If you try to see the same output, now here if you try to see, actually the expected behavior is red color, but what has happened, it has applied the color blue. So why this has happened is because of this specificity issue. Okay, so because of this specificity, so it has taken that this one has the more specificity than this type selector. Okay, so how this specificity is calculated, let's try to see. If you try to hover here, you will be able to see selector specificity in the Visual Studio Code. So you can have extensions like that, and here it is showing something like 001, and here it is showing something like 010, something like that. It is showing some selector specificity. Because of that specificity, so this one is applied. So how what is the specificity and how the specification algorithm works in the CSS, let's try to see. So actually the specificity, what I can say is each selector in the CSS, if you try to see, it gets a scoring. So let's go to the notepad, we'll explain here, and if I try to go here, so now we understood the specificity. So now each selector means what are the selectors we have learned, the different types of selectors, has a scoring. So it will be having a scoring. Scoring means nothing but a points. You can assume that one as a points also. So normally they will be saying it as a scoring points. You can think that specificity as the total points, and each selector type ends that points towards that score. The selector which has the highest points, it will win. So that is the main thing. So specificity comes which has the highest score, which selector has the highest score, it will win, and that selector will be, and that properties will be applied to the element. So what I can say is each selector, I told that it has a types, right? So first one, you know that it is a universal selector, right? So universal selector, we know that universal selector, this is one type of selector. So this has a 0 points. Okay, this has a 0 points. Now if you try to go to another one, element selector. Element selector means it's a type selector. So which you select with using the element name. Element selector, and also the pseudo elements. Okay, pseudo elements. Pseudo elements means which will be represented with a double column like this. So this one has a score of 1 point. Okay, 1 point. So element selectors and pseudo elements have a specificity of 1 point. And next comes the classes. Classes, pseudo classes, and also attribute selectors. Attribute selectors. So what is that point they will be having? It has a 10 points. Okay, it has a 10 points of specificity. Now if you try to see, next one is the ID selector. So ID selector. ID selector, it has a points of around 100. Okay, 100 points. It will have 100 points. So this has 100 points. So classes, pseudo classes, attribute selectors, this all has 10 points. ID selectors has 100 points. If you try to take inline styles, Inline styles means which you mention it in the element itself, HTML element itself. It has a points of 1000 points. Okay, now if you try to say any element, if you mention it as a not important, so if you mention it as a not important, then it has around 10,000 points. Okay, so this is the nothing but these are, so by using this rule we can estimate it. So I will try to tell you another type of scenario also, how actually algorithm calculates. So this is the general way. So how the people will remember is, so this is the general way. In universal selector it has a 0 points, element selector and pseudo element selector it has a 1 point, and classes, pseudo class, attribute selector this has 10 points, ID selector has 100 points, inline style has 1000 points, and which whatever the element which has not important means it is 10,000 points. Now let's go to our application, so HTML file which has this one. So now this is an attribute selector, this is a element selector, right? Element selector means, so we have selected the element using it with that element name. So that means this has a point of 1 point. Okay. Now what is that? What is the specificity point of this one? So this has 10 points. Why? Because this is a class selector. So this one we have selected using the class thing. So now this one has a 10 points. Okay. So at the top we'll try to mention it. So this has 10 points. So this has 10 points and this one has 1 point. Sorry. So now which one is having highest point? So as you already know, so this is having highest points. Because of that reason, so this one has been implemented. Now what I will try to do here, I will try to write in a combination that button which is having a class of my button. Okay. So my button. Now I will try to write like this. So here I will try to apply color green. Now what will apply, what is the CSS it will apply is, it will try to apply this time the color green. So what is the reason is, here the specificity points for this one is, so it is a combination of two selectors. Okay, it is a combination of two selectors. So that means the specificity for the element selector is 1. You know that 1 point. So element selector. And the combination we are having a my button is 10. So 1 plus 10. So it is equal to 11. So total point for this one is 11. So this one has a higher more points. It has scored higher more points. So that means it is having 11 points. This one is having 10 points and this one is 1 point. So now according to this one, what is the CSS it needs to apply? So this is the color green. Now if I try to see the output, it has applied a color green according to the specificity issue. So now this is how actually the specificity is calculated in the CSS. So now let's say that if you want to override some more, if you want to override is, so what you can do if you want to override, so for this button I don't want, so all these things are there, I don't want, so if you mention it at the bottom also, it will apply only the color green only. So if you want to apply that one means, so what you can do, some people will try to do here not important. So immediately they will try to use not important. So now what, how much points this has gained? 10 plus 10,000. Okay, it has gained 10 plus 10,000. So it has the more specificity. So now what it will apply? So now it will apply automatically blue. So why? Because it has applied a 10,000 specificity. So sorry, 10,000 plus 10 points. 10 points means this selector, and here this one is 10,000. Now if you try to apply for this one also not important, it will not apply. Why? Because it has 1 plus 10,000, that is nothing but 10,001. But whereas this one is having 10,010. So here it will apply still the blue color only. Okay, why? Because so this is having more. Now if you apply not important to this one, now the 10,011, so one is more, one point is greater here. So it will apply, it will try to apply green this time. So like this, actually the CSS it will be applying. So now what I want to tell you is, never use this not important in this one. So this will create some weird issues. So you will run into a problems that you cannot override this CSS. So if you want to override it in our real time project. So if you want to override this button, my button means what we can do. So you can have something like another class you can maintain it. Let's say that we'll try to maintain ID. ID is equal to then my button. Okay. So for this one ID, how much points we are having? 100 points. So my button. If I try to mention it as a my button, Now this ID, now this ID will be taken as a, now this one has the highest preference. So if you try to see here 1000, so that means 100 points. Now if you try to see the output, so it will be yellow. So like this, actually the CSS specificity comes. For this each element I have applied different types of CSS, but the selectors are different. I am trying to apply the same, for the same element, the different types of not the different types of CSS, the different types of rules are there for that one. So which rule will take into consideration? So you need to understand with the specificity. So that is the main thing you need to understand. So this is all about the specificity. So normally here if you try to see, it is having something like 0, 1, 1 and it is having 0, 1, 0. So like this it is trying to show, right? That scenario is something like, what I can say is, so that scenario is, what I can say is what I can say is, so this is also same thing only. So this is another way of calculating the specificity score, specificity score. So for example, let's say that first one, my ID, if it has applied ID means, so it will calculate the count of selectors. So here it will calculate the count of selectors. Okay, it will calculate the count of selectors. So first it will be having something like a 3-digit number. Okay, 3-digit number. So here it will try to say count means, so first one will be, so let's try to press enter. Yeah. So here it will be having let's say that 1, 1, 1. Okay, or otherwise 0, 0, 0. So this is the 3-digit number. Now it will try to take, the first one will be dependent on the ID. So if any ID is declared in the selector means, if any ID is declared in the selector, this will be incremented to 1. So if you are using 2 IDs means it will be incremented to 2. So I normally will have only 1 ID. So this will be having, this will be incremented to 2. Now the second one comes the classes and pseudo classes and attribute classes. Okay, so attribute selectors, sorry, not classes. So these things, when you have used these things, so this will be incremented. So if you have selector, if it is having 2 classes means, then it will be incremented with 2. Okay, like this, count will increment. Now another last one is the element and pseudo element. Pseudo element. So now the count it will take. So for example, here it will be implemented to 1, 2 like this. So this is the specificity calculated in different way. Now let's try to see the behavior of that one. Now here it is having 2 selectors. Okay, so I am having a selector in a combination of 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. So this is the thing. Now how many element selectors are there in this selector? Only one element selector is there. Okay, I can increment this one to 1. How many class selectors are there? So this is having only one class selector. I can increment to this one to 1. So now it is a calculation of 0, 1, 1. If you are here, you will be able to see the same thing, 0, 1, 1. So now for example, let's say that you are having another class, something like the name another class. Okay, so if you try to say button which is having a my button and it is having a another class, so I am trying to have more specificity. So now what will be the specificity calculated here? 1 plus 10 plus another 10. Why? Because we are having 2 classes. So 1 plus 10 plus 10. So this is around 21. But whereas in the algorithm it will calculate how many IDs are there. So there are 0 IDs. Okay, 0, how many classes or pseudo classes or this one attribute selectors are there? So there are 2, 1 and 2. Okay, so let's make it as a 2. How many element selectors are there? The pseudo element selectors are there? There are 0. So you can make it as 0. So now, oh sorry, element selector 1 is there, right? So this is the element selector. So I can make it as a 1. So now the specificity of this one is 0, 2, 1. If you hover here, it will come 0, 2, 1. So this is how normal it will be calculated. Both are one and the same only. So here you will be able to see 21. So nothing but here it will be something like 0 to 1 only. But we are having in a general number notation format, we are trying to say 21 like that. So here it will be having 0, 2, 1. Actually, internally that calculation will be having something like 0, 2, 1. So, but in order to have a clear understanding for us as a developers, okay, this is the number 21 and this is 10,000 like that. Okay, this is having higher more importance. 21 is greater than, right? So we can take it like that. but internally the algorithm will calculate it like this. So both are one and the same. Just I am trying to say. So when you are trying to install the extensions and all those things, you will be able to see 0, comma. So what is this comma and all those things means? Nothing but like this. It will assume the count, but here we are doing the addition. Both are one and the same only. So that is the about this what I can say, specificity issue. This is all about the specificity thing. So now what we have learned in the specificity. So this is one of the important concept. So specificity, each selector has a scoring and a points, and universal selector has a 0 points. Element selector and the pseudo elements has a 1 point. Classes, pseudo classes, attribute selectors, these all have 10 points. ID selector has 100 points. Inline selector has 1000 points, and not important. So this one has 10,000 points. So this one is the normal notation, and we have seen this one as a general notation how the algorithm calculates. So it is something like a 3-digit comma oriented number, and first one represents the ID selectors, the count, and here it represents the class, pseudo class, and attribute selectors, the count, and the last one is then element and the pseudo element selectors, the count. So like this it will calculate based on the specificity thing. So the whatever the CSS it might has to apply to the element, it will apply the CSS only. So this is how when a conflict rises in a CSS, if you are having a same CSS for the same element. So these are the different ways how the CSS algorithm will go on resolving the conflict. So this is all about the specificity issue. So this is how up to now what we have learned. So we have seen first one, these are the 4 stages. So position and order of appearance you understood very clearly. So there is no doubt in that one. Specificity up to now, previously we used to have doubt how that specificity score is calculated. Now we are clear on this one. And origin, we know about this one, origin. So how the preference will be taken care. And next comes the important. So this is the important thing. So this is all about the specificity thing.